Hi and welcome to Phelps Guitars. This is Jason and I am going to talk you through a repair and restoration that I've done to a 1940s/50s GH&S Melody Maker, which is essentially a banjo mandolin or banjolin. The first thing that I had to do to this instrument was to take the neck off, as it needed work doing to the frets. They were proud as a result of shrinkage to the material of the neck. And while it was off, the actual fretboard was coming away from the neck and needed gluing down, so I did that quickly while it was off. Doesn't take too long. Also, while it was in pieces, I have checked the tension and tuned the head, which is a natural vellum head. The ring clamps around the edges were loose, so they obviously needed tightening up. Once it was back together, the next thing I needed to do was replace the nut, as the original one had split. So I've put a new bone nut in position. They're quite fragile, dealing with narrow pieces of bone, so you do need to be quite careful when cutting the slots. It's very easy to chip out little bits of bone when you're cutting them down to size, especially for things like mandolins, as you've got unison pairs, so two strings right next to each other with a couple of mil gap, and it's very easy to chip that inside tooth out if you're not careful. So once that was cut and secured in place with the tiniest dab of super glue, I then went on to restring it. As you can see here, I'm just tightening and tensioning up the strings. It was a bit fiddly trying to get them through the tailpiece, because there's really tiny little holes at the end, and also little pins that hold the loops of the strings, and they do pop off occasionally when you're doing that. So here I'm just bringing the instrument up to pitch. I'm going to check it in a minute just to make sure that it's playable. You've got to just make sure they're stretched in properly and they do sit together, otherwise it sounds quite nasty and out of tune. So what I did there, quick play check, see how it's doing, and checking for the intonation to see if it's in tune at the 12th fret, which it was roughly, wasn't too bad at all. Finally here I'm just finessing the nut just to get it down to a playable level. The frets originally, I cut them high so that I didn't go too deep, so that I can do this once it's strung up. In essence, just to get it to play and feel nice. So I generally do that by feel. And also here on the bridge, it's got a small fret for a saddle essentially, and there were a couple of high parts on that. So they needed filing, and yeah, this is it. The final tune, tweak, a little bit more finesse in there on the lower strings, and that was it. If you enjoy this sort of thing, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and all that nonsense. Cheers. Bye bye.